Legitimately, what is this book? What is this book, everybody? I can't. Hello, interwebs. Today I am going to be reviewing the final book in the first Mistborn trilogy, The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. And everybody, I am about to do a gush fest on this book because hot dang, was this phenomenal. And I almost, it almost lost me at the beginning of this book. I'm so excited to talk about this book. I am honestly so pumped to talk about this book, and I'm just going to get this out of the way here. This is a review for the third book in the trilogy. I have the other two reviews up for the other two books already, so I'm going to try and keep it spoiler-free towards the top, but we are going to gush about this book later on, and I'm going to have to get full boyer into spoilers. So I'll try and make that clear, but just know that the spoiler-free section is going to be kind of shorter, but I will say, if you have not read the Mistborn trilogy, it is worth it. The ending of this book, so worth it. The entire journey, phenomenal. So if you have not read the series, if you're somehow jumping into this book and, this review and being like, should I get into the series? Is worth it? Yes, do it. Just go, stop watching this. Well, watch the video because I need the money. I need to help pay the bills. But go and read the series because it is so good. So again, let's get into the spoiler-free discussion up front, and then I'm gonna gush about so much with this book. So spoiler-free, I will say the opening of this book almost had me disappointed. The first, I want to say, the first third of this book, I was kind of frustrated, and I was just sort of saying this feels a little bit slow. It feels like it's lost some of the elements of what I really loved about this series, which was just the building out of the world. Some of the coolest things about the Mistborn trilogy is that how meticulously it was clear that Brandon Sanderson plotted out this entire world from the beginning. This isn't a Lost situation or a J.K. Rowling situation where it's I totally planned it out from the beginning, and clearly they did not. Here that this world was so meticulously planned and thought out by Brandon Sanderson from the start of the series. Sorry, there are police sirens out the window, so if you hear that, I apologize. But that's what I've really loved about the first two books, is every single time there's a revelation, you're like, oh, that makes sense with, oh boy. That's a lot, that's, I don't know if you can hear it, but that is loud. Is it my house? Did I do something wrong? Oh God. Anywho, it's so clear that Brandon Sanderson plotted this out. And so the first, third of this book, that didn't have that. The other thing, too, is I like a lot of palace intrigue. The first two books had a lot of this, machinations, politics, palace intrigue, messing with different groups, trying to get in with different groups. And the first third of this book didn't really have that. This mostly was we are now in a apocalypse situation. Things are breaking down, things are falling apart, and everyone's kind of desperate, and so the world is just sort of we're all in survival mode, which can be interesting, but it kind of lost a little bit of the flavor of what I liked about this series. On top of that, this book was focusing on some characters that I really did not care about, namely Spook. Spook is a character who's just been kind of in the background for the other two books, and in this book, he takes a very center stage for one of the storylines of it, and I was kind of I don't care about Spook. He's fine, but I kind of find him boring. And so with all those three things kind of going on here, I was sort of a little bit disappointed with where this book decided to start off. But then, 1/3 of the way through the book, it starts to all coalesce, and it picks up steam, and it never stops. 1/3 of the way into this book, it just goes and it goes, and I honestly could not put this book down. I literally, every moment that I had, I listen to the audiobook version of this. I usually listen to podcasts quite a lot throughout the week. I missed some of my podcasts this week because I was just listening to this book nonstop because I was just so excited to just hear what happened next. And not just the plot, the character development, Sazed in particular, gets a truly phenomenal character arc, but all of the characters here are really just so phenomenal and wonderfully thought out and come to such really wonderful and perfect conclusions for the arc at the end of the series. I was left so fulfilled, and how everything clicks together just makes perfect sense. You're like, oh my God, this is so complicated, and yet you've made it make so much sense at the end of the series. And I did not think that something so complicated could feel so resolved by the end of a trilogy like this, but I feel resolution. And there's even hints towards future stuff that may happen, because there's more trilogies after this. There's more set in this universe. But if this is all I got, I would have felt fully resolved here, even with the little hints that were sort of like left out dangling of like new metals and stuff. So I like I said, that's the end of my spoiler-free section. Go read this book if you haven't, because we are going to get full bore into spoilers here. All right, let's get into spoilers here, because I just need to gush. I don't even know really where to start. I guess we'll start with characters. Every character in this novel had so much depth and so just really thoughtful arc. I think Sazed is probably the best one, the one that to like focus on here. I loved his arc of like having lost faith in his ability to teach and his belief in all of these belief systems, and how that pays off at the end. This arc of like him just going through trying to find truth in these religions that he preached for so long, and just not being able to find it was heartbreaking after the end of the last book, and how that gets paid off at the end of the book. Again, we're going full spoilers here. He's the hero of ages, and how he's able to fix the world is through his faiths, and how they all had a little bit of truth in them, and that's how they were able to like bring back the world to the way it was, to restore the world through faith, through religion. As someone who is agnostic myself, I found that message to be really kind of beautiful, that religions aren't all true, but there are some truths hidden within them. There are beauty, there is knowledge hidden in them, and sometimes dismissed amongst that. And I just thought that was such a brilliant personal arc for his character to go on from book one to this book, and just pays off beautifully in such a really wonderful way, that finally he chooses to have faith, and that faith is rewarded in everything that he planned to do. Was just fantastic. Even characters that I didn't care about in this story, with Spook, like I said in my spoiler free section, I don't care about Spook, but even he got a solid arc. He was probably my least interesting part of this. I didn't really care too much about like his feelings for this girl that he kind of meets, and it was easily the weakest part of the novel for me, his entire storyline. But I still enjoyed a lot of it, in the sense that like it was showing that he could be someone who could stand up to the evil of ruin. And could actually like not just fall into that trap, that there were other people pushing against it, that life and love and caring can persevere the day. And it was a nice reiteration of that theme within his character. Again, probably the weakest character in this entire story, weakest arc in this entire story, but I still liked it for what it was. But I also really loved, the other character that I really loved though was Elend. Elend had such a great sort of mirroring of the Lord Ruler from the first book, and you can see that the evil that the Lord Ruler had to do was sometimes born out of necessity and fear, and just being in a practical situation. And Elend's starting to realize that he is doing really terrible things because he has to, because there's nothing else to do in a no-win situation, and being a ruler sometimes means that. I think the book is a tad forgiving of the Lord Ruler. I mean, the dude did literally like murder slaves in public yards horribly, and I think the book at the end of the book is like, well, he was a good guy, he did some good things. The book kind of forgives the Lord Ruler a little bit too much, in my opinion. I wish there was some more nuance in there, like he did awful things but was still trying to do his best, whereas the book kind of just says, yeah, he was great. So I think there's a little bit too much forgiveness of his character, but overall I like the graying of that. Like there's so much just tearing apart of this chosen one trope within this. And again, speaking of chosen one, Vin not being the chosen one. Yes, she was chosen, but she was not the chosen one. She was not the hero of ages. That was Sazed. Such a great subversion. And I like the journey that Vin goes on here, that she learns that she's being used by Ruin, and the revelation that the spike, her earring, was a spike by Ruin. Blew my mind. I also really loved the development of a even third magic system. I mean, we already had hemalurgy, we already had the metal ingestation, I forget what it's called off the top of my head. But then we have the use of the spikes. I think her hemalurgy is actually the spikes. But the three different magic systems that this world set up all make sense and all bounce off of each other. But the spikes here that they're used, they kill other people, and then you can take their power, and feels very much a power of Ruin, and Ruin can control people through that. And learning about this new magic system and how it's been built up throughout the entire series, right down to Vin's earring and being a tiny spike, and other people having spikes in them, and that's how Rune's able to manipulate, control them, and corrupt them in small and subtle ways. You just see all of it weaving together, and it making sense and fitting into how these magic systems work and bounce off of each other, and feeding into the theme of Ruin versus preservation. And again, this idea that Ruin is a creature that can only destroy, and preservation was also a creature that could only preserve, and only by working together could they create. You're going from preserving to destruction. That's how you get creation. It just thematically just works so well. The development also of the of the Mistwraith and I'm blanking on their name, but the spy people group. For some reason, I'm blanking on the species name. I don't know why. But you get the build out of their society, the first, second generation, third generation, and the revelation of who the first generation is, the original people that went with the Lord Ruler to the Well of Ascension, was such a great revelation, and again shows just how all these worlds fit together and was thought through from the beginning. But I loved seeing this new society of all of the Koloss, of the Mistwraith folks, and just how their world gets built out, and the different society that gets built out with them. It was just so cool and so complicated. And so while I was at the beginning of this book, while I was disappointed, it's like, oh, there's not a lot of palace intrigue, there's not a lot of society, there's not a lot of exposition, that gets forgotten halfway through the book, because there's still all there. This depth of explanation, this depth of society, this depth of intrigue, all taking place within a post-apocalyptic society, is definitely handled by Brandon Sanderson. Yeah, I have to say, I probably, as a whole package, I probably enjoyed the second book more, just because I enjoyed the whole like palace intrigue stuff going on in the second book. But I have to give him credit here. The masterclass of storytelling here, shown in this third book. So rarely do you see a trilogy that comes together so satisfyingly, so perfectly, that it leaves me floored. It leaves me floored. I so rarely gush this much about a series, and there are things that I could rant about here and there, but like small things, but like maybe I could want more representation of different people and treatment of women within certain things. I could make those nitpicks. But in terms of just overall storytelling, in terms of narrative, satisfaction, in terms of character development, in terms of world building, this is a masterclass. It truly is, and this might go down as one of my favorite fantasy trilogies. I am very excited, and I was so disappointed. Honestly, the only biggest disappointment I had is that it ended, and that I don't get to read it anymore. And I know there are more trilogies, but I honestly, and maybe the other trilogies will be good, but I hear they're different. And so I will want to return this world, and I will want to read more of the Mistborn books and the Stormlight archives and all that stuff. But I wonder how they could possibly measure up to the heights of this book series, because this was honestly a great journey to go on, and I honestly cannot gush about it enough. I truly cannot gush about it enough. But that's my thoughts on this trilogy. Fantastic book. I will read it again at some point. I'm excited to delve into more of the Mistborn series, but knowing that it probably won't measure up, but I'm still excited to read more in this world. But I'd love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think of the Mistborn books? I want to have that discussion, because I need more. I just need more discussion about these books. But beyond that, thank you so much for watching this. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and my main channel. I have a Patreon that you can help support me at. But beyond all of that, I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper.